Hello, guys. Welcome back to Life's Deceit's podcast with me, your girl, Jen Simpson. I hope that you're having an amazing week, day, afternoon, night, wherever you are in the world. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we have a very special guest, Regina Hiremath. She is the founder of Alamonia Life and a passionate advocate for those navigating divorce and domestic violence. Today we'll be talking about childhood trauma, how it shapes our choices in choosing our partners, friendships, any type of relationships, and how dealing with childhood trauma, healing, domestic violence and abusive relationships.
My mom was just very, she didn't have help from my dad. We ended up having to move in with her coworker's family. A lot of things were happening to me with the coworker's kids. And so, 7-year-old doesn't have the words to, to explain how you're being sexually abused and how you're being beaten and, hit and stuff. And so when I did go to her to try to tell her what was going on, she then punished me physically.
After overcoming childhood trauma and a 20-year of emotional abuse in her marriage, Regina got divorced.
I was seeking to fill a void. I was looking in all the wrong places. I was looking outside of myself. In my mid-20s, I met someone who I thought was the love of my life and was quite different from everyone. During the engagement and shortly after we got married, the real person was starting to appear.
She chose to leave that marriage. She chose herself. She chose to heal. She chose to be a dedicated life coach, blogger, author, and speaker. Regina dedicated herself to helping others understand where their trauma stemmed from, what is hindering them, and how to heal. Through her blog, community building efforts, and public speaking, she has become a strong tower, not just for herself and her family, but also for many women and men across the world. She has also recently published a book that I can't wait to get my hands on. It is called Lessons on the Way to Onesome. A deeply personal account of her own healing journey, her journey through healing and self-discovery. And Regina is here to share her story with us, be a voice, be a sounding board, and remind us that it's okay to be selfish. It's okay to choose ourselves. Divorce is not the end. Your trauma is not the end of your story. Your healing is just the beginning of a new season in your life. Go and grab your favorite snack. Go grab a bottle of water, your favorite tea, maybe some coffee, or even a glass of wine or your favorite beverage, and get a blanket. Come unwind with me and Regina. Thank you for reaching out to be a guest on my podcast. I know that when we're sharing our stories, it's not as easy as it seems to some people. Some people think we're just sharing it just because we want to share it, but we're actually sharing it for other people and not just for ourselves. And for our listeners who aren't familiar with who you are, can you briefly introduce yourself? Can you tell us where you're from, what you represent, and what you hope to leave on this earth as your legacy?
Okay. My name is Regina Hiremath. I am here in San Diego, California, and I am an empowered woman who fought through lots of trauma and struggle to become the person that I was designed to be. And my legacy, I hope, will be that I came and I gave all that I had to give, all that I was designed to do, everything that I was supposed to put out, that I was able to accomplish that.
I love that. And you're already doing it. Um, you're already doing it. And I know that we don't get told often as women that we're doing it and we're doing great unless we go to an event or we're a speaker and we hear it that way. But you are doing it, and I appreciate you for continuing to do it. You were raised and born in California,
No, I was actually born in Cleveland.
and I know that your career, you have chosen to be not just an author, not just a speaker, but you're also a blogger, a life coach, and a domestic violence organization executive board member.
Yes. And beauty professional.
Oh, and beauty professional. You
Yes.
what do you do exactly in beauty?
I have a hair and makeup studio.
Wow, that's beautiful. I got to
Thank
come
you.
over there and get my hair done.
Come on.
That's amazing. You are a powerhouse. Now, I know I read a bit about in your bio that you were raised in an abusive household. Can
Yes.
you tell us what your childhood was like? Were you raised with both parents, siblings?
When I was born, uh, my parents were young and young minded. And so, as early as I can remember, I spent a lot of time with my maternal grandmother. And then, when I was in first grade, she passed away from cancer. And so, the family decided that I needed to go back to live with my mom. And my mom was not prepared to be a parent. And so that one school year that I spent with her ushered in a season of trauma in nearly every way. And so by the end of the school year, my mom lost custody of me. And then I was um, staying with my paternal grandparents while the case went to court. And my maternal grandmother's sister, so my great aunt, stepped up to raise me. And when I traveled out of state to go live with her, shortly after getting there, I discovered that she was a severe alcoholic and she was very abusive. And I endured that for 10 years. And finally, on Christmas Day, my senior year, I ran away.
So that was when you're about 17, 16, or
Yeah, I was 17 years old. I ran away and camped out at a friend's house while I tried to figure out where I would go. And I decided to go to Los Angeles to live with my mom. But, you know, things hadn't changed a whole lot. So it was challenging.
now when you talk about abuse and you said abuse in all forms, could you explain a little bit about the abuse that you experienced?
Yes. So with my mom, it was physical abuse. There was neglect, and I was sexually abused by others who were in the home where we were staying, and it was awful. It was
I
awful.
can imagine. I
Yeah.
can imagine. You know, when we say neglect, people like to say, "How do your parents neglect you?" Explain. They did all they could do. They
Right.
worked, they provided shelter, they provided food, the basic necessities, right?
Right. Right.
And a lot of people would say, we should be grateful for what our parents did for us. And of course, we're grateful. You did what you were supposed to do or what you thought you were supposed to do.
For
And
me, it went deeper than just not getting the sandwich I wanted, or the shirt,
yeah,
or the pair of shoes. Um, my mom was just very, she didn't have help from my dad, and she was just ill prepared as a parent, even as an adult at that time. And so because she couldn't maintain a household, we ended up having to move in with her coworker's family, and that house was very chaotic. And so a lot of things were happening to me with the coworkers' kids. And so I was going to my mom, and at the age of 7, I was trying to explain to her what was happening to me as best as I could. And 7-year-old doesn't have the words to, you know, to explain how you're being sexually abused and how you're being beaten and, hit and stuff. And so when I did go to her to try to tell her what was going on, she then punished me physically.
I'm thinking about it in my head because I was also molested by
Okay.
a family member. And I remember telling my mom, and I don't think I've ever understood or felt what neglect felt like until that moment.
Right.
And although I felt neglected, what I wanted the most was to make her happy. So if that meant retracting my story
Right.
or pretending like it never happened and block it out of my mind, I was willing to do whatever as a child because
Right.
you want your mother's love. So that neglectful feeling, if you can think back now that you're an adult, 7 years old, what did that feel like when you were a child, and now that you're an adult, what do you understand about neglect?
At that time, I felt very confused because, like I said, my maternal grandmother, she was basically everything to me. And so then to lose her and then, move back with someone that I don't really know, and then to be experiencing these awful things, and then going to the person who is supposed to protect you and care for you and love you, and then be met with anger and frustration because I'm telling you what's happening to me. It was very confusing, very disappointing, and frustrating for me because until that point, I had not experienced abuse and neglect. As far as maybe it happened when I was much younger before my memory could kick in, but I was at a loss for words. I didn't know. I had no one else to turn to, no one else to share with what was going on with me, and things were intensifying, and it got to the point where I was injured and I ended up in the hospital. So, it was it was rough.
I can see it on your face and I can feel it in your spirit that you're actually taken back to that moment
Yeah,
of feeling those emotions.
yeah,
And it's interesting because I'm feeling those emotions with you too. And I don't know if it's because we both experienced the same thing or
yes.
it's just you have
Well,
such a great energy and
thank you.
you've really come a long way. And I truly want you to understand that you've done a great job. I'm not too
Yes,
sure why I need you to understand that you did a great job with
yeah,
yourself
yeah,
and that you should be really proud.
yeah. I think in my healing journey, I understood that when I was in the hospital, because I created a story about what happened that night, and it was a 7-year-old story.
Mm.
Thankfully, there was a nurse who would not let it go. She kept coming to my room and just sitting down and talking to me until I got comfortable to share what had actually happened. And that I realized through my healing journey that at the age of 7, I was brave enough to open up and share with somebody what was going on because something had to give and it wasn't going to happen magically. And so I realized that little Regina was braver than everyone around her.
I love that you came to that realization because I don't think that we actually take the time to sit down and process what we went through and realize that we were really strong. We were
Yeah.
braver than we actually thought.
And everyone around me was just living in some kind of fog or stress of life or whatever. But here I was at the age of 7, having to be my own protector. So when I realized that, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And After you told your mom, obviously she didn't accept it. At what point did things start to change?
In terms of,
The abuse that you were facing, the abuse that you were going through, the neglect, the
okay, so once I shared with the nurse at the hospital that that woman was an angel, because she knew that that story that I was telling didn't add up. And she was patient enough and kind enough to sit with me long enough to get comfortable to really share with her what had happened. And at that point, it was reported, and my mother lost custody.
and then you went into foster care.
Um, Thankfully, my paternal grandparents stepped up to um, take me in while the case was going to court.
And things change after you started to live with your grandparents.
It was just over the summer while I guess the case was, going to court. And then my maternal grandmother's sister stepped up to take me. I knew her. I'd seen her a few times. We'd go to her apartment sometimes, and she was really happy and kind of floating around the place. But once I relocated out of state to live with her, I discovered that she was serious alcoholic and quite abusive.
I recently had an episode about intergenerational trauma, and that there's certain things that are in our DNA, and it transfers. And
Right.
you spoke about your grandma being an alcoholic,
My
correct?
great grandmother's,
Your
I
great,
mean, my grandmother's sister. So my great aunt.
and she was also abusive.
Yes.
It appears that there was some intergenerational trauma still there
Yes.
that just kept
And
passing on.
mhm. In my healing journey, what I realized was that my great grandmother, who I was very close to as a child, her mother was a slave. So there's no doubt in my mind that everything that I experienced was a direct effect of slavery. I'm 4 generations removed. And so, due to this, I like to describe as an extreme hostage abusive situation that occurred, for generations in this country to African Americans, it didn't just go away when slavery was abolished. All of those physical, emotional scars were passed down to us. And I'm grateful that at my generation, I have said it stops here. This is where we begin to heal. This is where we rewrite the story for the generations to come.
This is where you broke that cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Broke the chains.
I saw that broke the chains, and you really broke the chains. I sat with myself for a while and I said, sometimes you want to pass blame instead of figuring out where it stemmed from. Where was the root of it? And then how do we dig out that root so it doesn't keep growing and festering within our families? And you actually did that work to figure out where it stemmed from. You went back to slavery, and you knew that was in your family history. You
Mhm.
decided that it stopped there and that was it, and it wasn't going to transfer on to the next generations. And that is
Yeah,
powerful, because it's not easy when you're breaking generational cycles. It is not easy. It's like a consistent thing that you're doing all the time. You're finding different things, you're turning different stones, but you're doing it.
I'm trying
How
hard.
you, it's it's not easy. I got to tell you, it's not easy, because I had a conversation with my brother today, and we're talking about my younger sister. And I have to always talk about this because I think we have to realize that although we're the ones that are breaking it, somebody else is also affected by it.
Yes,
So although we're doing our work to break what we know and what we see within ourselves, we forget that there's somebody else that is connected and that is affected and that is living and that is tormented by it. And I sat with my
absolutely.
brother on the phone today, and I was like, I just don't understand my sister. She has everything that we did not get. She did not experience trauma. But I told them there's a reverse. She didn't experience it, but she saw it. So she's affected in a different way that we didn't expect. We were
Right.
strong enough to realize it and break those chains, but she's tormented by it and it's affecting her in a more mental way.
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes all you can do is just pray and continue to be there for that person, because sometimes they're unaware and they don't want to admit that I'm affected by it. Although I wasn't in direct contact and it wasn't me, I was affected by it. So the work is not easy. And it really takes, we always say it takes a village to raise a child. I don't think people understand what that really means. It really takes a village of people that are willing to come together, bring their brains, their minds, their thoughts, their emotions together, and figure out new ways how to tear down strong towers. So the work is not easy, but you are doing it, even in the moments when you feel tired. Give yourself some time and keep pushing through, because it can be draining. And I know that for sure. It is draining, but you are blessed and you are highly favored and you are not alone.
I believe that.
You know,
I truly.
I don't think we know that we have our ancestors that are, they're surrounding us. Their protection is divine.
Yes. And they prayed for us when they were here. They prayed for us.
They did. They did. They prayed for us for what we were going to face ahead and the battles that we would have to fight. So in those moments when you feel tired and weary, just know that you're not alone. And this is what we do together as a community, as a unit. We bring awareness and we talk about those things. And we come together and we pull from each other. So you are not alone.
I'm motivated
Yeah.
more than ever. And I'm on this journey and this path that comes together before me. So I don't worry about what my next step is because I know that I'm walking in and on purpose. The path is there. All I have to do is step.
All you have to
So,
do is trust, step, and have faith. That's it.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
How did your childhood trauma influence your relationship choices, particularly in choosing a partner?
Okay. So, coming into early adulthood, I was terribly scarred in so many ways. And I was constantly seeking validation and acceptance, which landed me in lots of friendships and relationships that I had no business entertaining. But because I was seeking to fill a void, I was looking in all the wrong places. I was looking outside of myself. And so, in my, like I said, I had some bad relationships, bad friendships, things that transpired because of the needs that I did not know how to fulfill. So in my mid 20s, I met someone who I thought was the love of my life and was quite different from everyone that I'd met. About 3 years later, we got married. And during the engagement and shortly after we got married, the real person was starting to appear. The mask came off. The narcissism, not that I knew what that was back then, was taking over. And I was struggling with understanding and reconciling this wonderful person that I met, but suddenly, who are you? There must be something wrong with my mind. There must be something wrong with me if I suddenly see this person as being completely opposite of who they showed up as. So this marriage was challenging.
I would say we have blinders on sometimes. Sometimes we can
Absolutely.
see the red flags, but the blinders, what we want is what we want. What we see is what we see. Although
Right.
our intuition sometimes speaks to us and it's screaming at you, showing you something's not right
Right.
with this person, but we can't see it
Right.
because we're in the moment.
Right.
How would you
For
say the
me,
experiences?
for me, it felt oddly normal because of everything that I had experienced. It felt normal. It didn't feel good, but neither did my childhood. So it felt normal. It felt like, well, this is how life is supposed to be for me. This is how it's always been. So why would it be different? Why wouldn't it kind of continue down the same path that I had been on? And that's what made it so challenging because I didn't know what I didn't know. My earliest memory of love was my maternal grandmother, and she was gone when I was in first grade. There was no one in my corner. Typically our friends and people around us, they challenge us, they ask us questions. Oh, maybe you don't sound happy, or is something going on? I really didn't have that in my corner at the time because my best friend and I had fallen out when I got married, and the relationship went downhill from there. It didn't have anything to do with my husband or my relationship. She and I just had some challenges. So was kind of on my own.
Mhm.
I was kind of on my own. And that's a tough place to be because we need a support system. We need people around us who kind of challenge us or who are cueing into what is going on with us, how we're feeling, and things like that.
I agree with that. And you said something that it was just familiar to you. But what I find interestingly odd about that, it was familiar, but it was something different. It was
Yeah.
something different than what you experienced as a child. It was a different type of love
Yeah.
that felt right.
Right.
It was familiar. And I find that when something feels different than what we've experienced, we tend to draw to it more. And
Right.
I agree that we do need people around us that are in tune with our emotions and our spirits, and they can detect things easily. Say something's off. You're acting
Right.
differently. Your tone is different, because they notice the patterns with us and they can identify it and say something to us and help us on that journey. So I do understand what you mean by something that looks familiar but felt different. So you thought it was right.
Yeah. On my healing journey, I was able to look back at everything and see how it happened and how it felt like the right thing for me to do
Yeah.
because my needs were simple and I was seeking things outside of myself for validation and assurance, but that comes from within.
And experiencing childhood trauma like sexual abuse, how did that alter your self perspective of yourself and your approach towards relationships? What patterns did you start to notice?
That I could, like, I could shut down easily, and there were times where I was just like open. It would kind of jump between the two.
How did you find the courage to shift that you shut down?
Oh, that just happened a few years ago. That just happened a few years ago because the marriage was long. It was 23 years. And so when you come into a situation or a marriage where you have trauma that is unhealed, unprocessed, you haven't done the work, and you marry a narcissist, you end up adding trauma on top of trauma. And
Mhm.
so um I was putting on the good face and doing all these things and starting businesses and just focusing on what I had control of or what I thought I had control of, and being the person that I needed to be, that I needed to present, to go out and do these amazing things so you can come back and deal with more trauma. And you'll be okay. You don't feel good today. You don't really feel good most of the time, but it's because you work hard and maybe you eat the wrong things, or maybe you're, running yourself down, but it's okay. Just keep going, keep going. You'll be
Yeah.
you'll be fine. Be happy, be successful, and you know, that will bring you joy. And eventually nothing you do, nothing you obtain, nothing you achieve will bring you the satisfaction that you're seeking. And you have to start to look at your life and take it apart and figure out what's really wrong here and how do I fix it.
It's interesting you say that about just work and be successful. And I think people believe that when you try to overachieve
Yeah.
and be successful and check off all the boxes in your life that you were told that you're supposed to do to be happy and successful.
Yeah. Oh, I had it. I had the big homes, the luxury vehicles, the bank accounts, had the stuff.
But there was still
Something terribly missing.
something
My
terrible.
peace,
Mhm.
my peace, my joy, my happiness, my satisfaction, my self-esteem, nowhere to be found.
Mhm.
I look back on pictures of myself and I can see just the sadness increasing and just wondering like, how did I not, how did I not, how did I not see it? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't want to. Maybe I didn't want to acknowledge it because that takes work.
And there was still a child in there. That's what I realized about myself when I was just covering it up. Being successful, finished school, got the career, made the money, got the cars, have the bank account. There was still a child living in there.
Yeah,
That child that never had the voice, that child that never got the attention, that child that never received the love, and the child that never had the opportunity to heal.
right.
And I truly believe that when the noise is gone and you're alone with yourself, that's the most, that could be a very traumatic time. That's when
Yes,
everything just comes
yes,
pouring down.
yes. And that's why for so long, for me, I was doing a lot, doing, I'm head of this, I'm running this business. Oh, I've got this group of friends. We're doing this, we're doing that. You stay very busy and you keep your mind going on so many things because if you were to stop for 1 minute and start to think about those scary thoughts, my life is so out of control, I'm so unhappy, but I can't think about that. I can't focus on that because I have all these things and stuff. I'm supposed to be happy. I'm living the life. I'm taking this trip. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Oh, but I can't slow down because if I slow down, I would actually have to peel back the layers of my life and see that I'm projecting happiness, but I'm truly not happy inside.
Yeah,
And that would mean that I'd actually have to do some work. And
that
that
is.
takes courage to reach that point and to walk through that door and keep going, working on yourself, peeling back the layers, understanding why you are where you are and how you're going to get out and how you're going to stay out.
Mhm.
It's a lot of work. It's hard work,
It is
but
hard
it's
work.
worth it.
Yeah, trust me, girl, it's worth it. You said something and it just flashed to me. I don't know if you experienced this, where your mom or somebody you loved told you that you weren't going to become something, or you weren't going to be successful, or you can remember the moments when you were stuck in that trauma state. And now you're an adult and you have everything that your parents didn't have. You have the lifestyle, you have this partner, you became something, you thrived. Why wouldn't you be happy? Why would you want to show anybody those internal scars? And that's literally what happens to a lot of people.
Hmm.
They have everything.
Because you've created this facade.
You
I
created the
write
facade.
about it in my book. You create this facade, and then you have to keep painting and duct taping and nailing to hold it together. And eventually you run out of nails and duct tape and things start to slip.
Yep. And you run out of the makeup and you run out of
Yes,
things to say.
yes,
Yep.
yes. And
Yep.
you realize so much more work to hold this facade together than it is to tear it apart take it to the ground and build it back up again the right way.
Would you say that the emotional abuse that you experienced as a child had a lot to do with the relationships that you built with friends and the lack of trust that you had, even in your own self and the people in your life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I didn't grow up with people affirming me and telling me how great I was. I was made to feel like I was a problem for everyone that I'd ever been around other than my grandparents. So everywhere I went, I was, made to feel like I'm a problem, I'm a burden. And so when you get around people who pretend to be your friends, you know, people pretend to love you and to care about you because they have an agenda behind it. You don't know anything about that, but hey, I'm happy you're here. You care about me. Hey, this is great. This is wonderful. But something feels off here.
Hmm.
This isn't quite, what I thought it was. And now I'm making decisions and I'm doing things that I really don't want to do, but I don't want to lose my friend or my relationship because I need acceptance. Something I can give myself, but I haven't figured that out yet. But I will one day. Yeah.
And the people pleasing.
Yeah.
Because you didn't, it's so funny how what we go through as a child can really shape our responses to things, how we say yes, how we say no, how we show up for our own selves.
Right.
And I wanted to know if there's a moment in your childhood that changed your understanding of your own worth, and how did that influence your healing process? Was there like a block because of you not understanding your worth as a child and then as an adult trying to heal?
I don't think as an adult I tried to heal. And I don't think as a child I had a moment to where I understood that I was valuable. It's just a few years ago that I really had the opportunity to say, "Hey, it's me." I think it was before I left the marriage, so it was just a few. I filed for divorce 5 years ago. I've been divorced for 3.5, coming up on 4 years, and it was during the time that I was fearful and ready to leave the marriage that I was guided to an exercise in understanding power that I possessed my entire life. I sat down and I began to journal about every experience in life that knocked me down and how I got back up again, starting at 7, all the way, what I could remember, all the way to that present moment. And it was such an incredible exercise because I was able to see the strength that I possessed throughout my life. And I got it. It was a moment of clarity. I get it. I've always had this strength. I've always had this power. I've always had this tenacity. I forgot, but it was always there and it always protected me throughout my entire life. And it hasn't gone anywhere. It's still in me. I can still tap into it. I can still use it to move forward. So I think that was probably the biggest moment of clarity for me.
And for anyone who has experienced any form of abuse as a child, can you explain to them why is it necessary and important to go back to the childhood and deal with those wounds? And why do you believe telling your story is an important part of healing?
It was paramount for me to go back into the recesses of my mind, into the dark, creepy, scary areas of my life and pull up every single trauma. In my book, I talk about how, as I was examining my life, it was as if I was looking at a spider web. And and the way that it was all interconnected. If you've ever seen a spider web, it's very intricate. The design and everything is
Yeah.
just so beautifully put together. It'll cause you to stare at it because you're just, everything is so symmetrical and it's just beautiful. But I had to look at my life in that way and how all of these traumas and things that I experienced were interconnected and created all of this chaos in my adulthood and life. And once I was able to see how it all came together and created this perfect storm, then I could understand what it was that I needed to remove from my life in order for me to move forward. I have low self esteem. No, but when you look at how incredible you've been throughout your life, regardless of the trauma, you're pretty amazing. And I had a lifelong fear of public speaking, but you have such an incredible story that you need to share. So you've got to get over that so that you can walk in your purpose. So, had I not done that, I would not have been able to switch everything around. I would not have been able to do a 180 if I didn't see where I went wrong, what I needed to change, and move forward in that. I would have been stuck like I've been for all of my adult life.
I agree with that. It's unstucking yourself and seeing what's underneath those layers of stuff,
Yeah,
the unhappiness, being in a relationship and not figuring out why. And even if you're not in an abusive marriage, but there are situations where you're married and there's just your partner's great. The relationship seems great, but there's just something missing.
right.
You just, when the lights go out, you're just not smiling anymore. You feel like there's a huge gap,
Avoid,
right? A void. And I
avoid.
agree with you that doing the work and telling your story, it can avoid a lot of things too, because there are situations where you have somebody in a relationship, they're there for you, they're willing and they're open. However, because of that void that you have, you can't be full with that person and share
Right.
yourself.
Yeah,
So
you're
now
not present.
you're not present. So now it's kind of like the other person feels kind of punished and
Yeah,
doesn't
because you're having
understand
an
what
out of body experience.
exactly. So I agree with you that it is important just to live a life that is deserving and full for yourself. Now, your divorce. I know you said it took place 5 years ago. It's going on 4 years since you've been divorced. During your divorce, was there a pivotal moment in your life that you discovered something about yourself that you had not known before until that moment of, okay, now I'm getting divorced? I had no idea that this was me or I had these qualities or traits.
Absolutely. I was just months into the divorce process. Everything was still very raw and becoming very real because during the marriage, a lot of my emotions had shut down. And now that I was giving myself permission to leave and to live,
Mhm.
everything was coming back online. I was crying, I was happy, I was sad, everything was intensified. And so I began to journal. I have an app on my phone, has its own passcode. And whenever I felt mentally congested, I started to journal and just let it flow. All of it just went in there. And at a certain point, I let a friend of mine read some of my journal entries, and she's like, "Wow, have you considered writing a book?" And not at that time. I was like, "I'm not feeling that. I want to start a divorce blog." So I didn't know what I was doing. But I went and found some people that did, and we got it going. And that was kind of the beginning of my journey, in that I wanted to do something that would help me. But I felt that there were other people who were experiencing the same things that I was going through, and that maybe they didn't have an outlet. So by the end of that year, the site went live. Yeah.
So you discovered that there was a writer in you.
Yes.
You discovered that there was a writer in you. And,
Absolutely.
we go through different experiences in life. And our experiences shape us. As much as we want to be mad and upset sometimes about what we went through, and we think that if we had went this way, things wouldn't have turned out the way that it did, I still strongly believe that everything was already planned out for us in a way. And if we had not gone through certain things in our lives and our experiences, it wouldn't help shape the women and the people and the men that we're supposed to be.